There is Diandra Mae. Hey, Diandra.
Hello.
Hello. Sorry about the late start this afternoon. It was operator error, me being the operator. So these guys were all ready to go. They were on camera. I was on a different camera screen somewhere in cyberspace. Thank you for your patience. We're going to hear from the team of KidLitArt chat, or is it, how do you correctly say it in conversation?
We just say KidLitArt.
KidLitArt.
Yeah.
Or you don't say hashtag KidLitArt.
No.
No? Okay. We've got Blythe Russo.
Hello.
Hey, Blythe.
How are you? Thank
Illustrators. We've got Diandra Mae, who most of you already know well, illustrator and an illustrator coordinator of the Houston SCBWI chapter. Is that still accurate, Dee?
Still happening, yep.
Okay, the Space City Illustrators.
Yeah, that's just the name for our little online collective because, you know, it's better than Oil City.
We got Rubin Pingk, illustrator.
Hello.
Hi, Rubin. And
Hey, Mark.
And I'm Mark Mitchell with Marks and Splashes Learning, and Russ should be on with us in a minute.
Yeah, Renee Carilla is also a moderator, but her schedule won't allow for the chat because she's very much a part of the team as well.
Very good. Okay, well, let's start off just asking about KidLitArt and what you guys do every Thursday except Thanksgiving. Or tell us about your wonderful group, Dee.
Well, it started so many years ago.
Yeah.
It was started by Bonnie Adamson and Wendy Martin. Bonnie was the IC at the time at the SCBWI Carolinas group, and she was also a moderator for the KidLit chat group, which happens on Tuesdays. And it was brought up during their chat that there was, you know, enough conversation for there to be an illustrators chat, and so, you know, Wendy said, you know, we should have an illustrators chat, and Bonnie said, I will if you'll help me moderate. So those two, you know, kicked off the chat, and I joined in on, I guess, the second year when I joined Twitter, and I became aware of it. And it was a great group, and there was a lot of great conversation. But at some point, you know, the duties of both Bonnie and Wendy kind of became overwhelming, and they said, you know, we were going to have to let this go if anybody else wants to pick it up. And Greg Matusik for a little bit was a moderator as well, and it went on for a little bit, and then finally it just kind of, you know, got set aside. And then a few years ago, you know, I started thinking, you know, I really miss those people because, you know, Twitter is like our water cooler, and I didn't get to hang out with my buddies on their lunch break anymore. And I was like, man, I kind of wish, maybe I should talk to Bonnie about that. And that same day I started thinking about that, Russ had posted in an online Facebook group, you know, hey, does anybody else miss those chats? Does anybody else want to start it up again? And I was like, me. And so I talked to Bonnie, you know, and I said, what do we need to do? And she just, you know, handed the reins over to us. And Renee, we kind of looped in because she kind of popped into the conversation too. And we said, well, you're coming with us. So the last couple of years, we've been, you know, rotating through topics. We try to keep it fresh and relevant to what's going on for children's illustrators. And we know all of us have been members of SCBWI, and so we kind of know the path that everyone needs to walk and the kind of information they need. And so we try to help provide that. And then also we just kind of try to have fun. You know, sometimes we have open topics and we go off the rails a little bit. But you know, what's a cocktail party without a few random conversations? And we've decided, you know, every once in a while we want to really push our members because our community changes and it grows and people come and they go. And we really want to push the people who are hanging out there to do their best. And so we decided it's become an every other year thing because the Picture Book Dummy Challenge is quite large. There's a lot of work involved in it. And so we set it aside this year, and we knew we were going to do it next year. And we know people have been asking us, you know, isn't there something you guys are going to be doing? Because we've done, you know, like a month-long art challenge before. We've done certain prompts before. And Russ had the idea. He said, you know, what if we did a writing challenge, you know? And we figured, you know, that let's integrate this into the Picture Book Dummy Challenge so that people are more prepared next year. We kick it off in January. A lot of times people will kind of float into the group in January. And I don't know if you guys notice this at your estimated BUI events, but January is the month when you get a bunch of new people. You know, the new year happens and people decide, this is the year I'm going to write a picture book, or this is the year I'm going to do good. And so January, our chats are pretty large and people pop in. And if they're coming in cold, you know, sometimes it can be a little bit much to jump into the Picture Book Dummy Challenge. So we're trying to kind of prepare people. You know, this is what we're doing in January. If you don't have a story you want to work on, if you're not, you know, if some illustrators just take an already written story, a fable or a folk tale or something, and reinterpret it, and they use that as their guideline. But a lot more illustrators now, they're writing. And so we're kind of giving people a framework to follow, you know, with their writing so that they have their manuscript done by the end of the year. So in January, they can focus on the dummy process, so they're not getting bogged down trying to write and draw at the same time with it all.
Great. Okay, now Russ has joined the call. Hey, Russ.
Hey, how you doing?
We've got the 4 moderators on. This is fantastic. I don't think people realize if they haven't been to your blog yet, or they haven't attended one of your Twitter chats, this is an extraordinary educational resource that's out there available for all illustrators and aspiring illustrators for free. It's still free, isn't it? Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, pay us now.
What, Rubin? I'm sorry.
I said we do accept donations. So.
Yeah, they do accept donations. Yeah, you guys need to do a Kickstarter for this fantastic resource. Or you could just give them money when you see them at a conference. But I'm kind of curious. We've got Diandra Mae, and then we've got the moderators. So what do the moderators do? Can you in these Twitter chats? Are you guys kind of like the bouncers? You know, what is it?
We're like the goalies.
The goalies.
Yeah, we kick the ball back in play if it gets kind of chaotic. Or maybe more of a referee, so when things get kind of chaotic, we kind of bring them back to the topic.
Throw the ball back into the court. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, cool.
We try to keep everyone on track. Sometimes the moderators are the ones getting people out.
You bring Dee back online, huh?
But then we try to just engage with everyone because there's a bunch of, you know, not everyone can talk with everyone within the hour period because it's always constantly going. So it's just engaging all the participants and keeping everyone on track and making sure everyone's integrated into the conversation.
Okay, great. And you guys can find this chat going on Twitter on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. U.S. Central Time, and it's hashtag KidLitArt. Is that right? And we've got the link to the blog. I think it's the first link in the description box over to the right, and then we've got links to everybody's Illustrator website. We got Blythe's link there. We got Dee's there, Rubin's, Russ's, and my blog, although I'm not part of the KidLitArt chat, but I have ducked in and out a few times and was very entertained. And
we have a lot of lurkers, and they hang out, they don't engage with us, but you know, we know they're there soaking it all in. It's totally okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it's okay to lurk. Now we've heard it officially. And the other really
feedback to follow the conversation. It just makes life a little easier than just going right on Twitter and trying to follow the chaos.
Would you restate that, Russ? Because I missed the first part.
We highly recommend that people use something like TweetDeck to follow the conversation.
Okay.
You don't have all the other conversations going on like if you just log on to Twitter.
Yeah.
TweetDeck, you can really control the use the hashtag. Yeah, you just see what's going on with our.
It keeps it right in the group, in the room of the group.
Yeah.
Great. And all kinds of links are shared, insights are shared, gossip, industry stuff, inside-y stuff. You just can learn so much by just hanging with them and then getting to know them. And I guess you guys sort of became friends through the you know, or met each other through KidLitArt chats on Twitter. The other thing that's really interesting about your group is when you are doing the Picture Book Dummy Challenge, which is every other year, as Dee just said, you match it up with this wonderful 8-month series of blog posts and essays from illustrators and different professionals in the industry, and they write on the blog, and their topics are picked up as topics in the chat. How does that work, Dee? What and tell us more about the
what we've done before is because we want people with the experience to speak on the topic, and so sometimes we'll send out invites. Last year, I think we scaled it back a little bit, but the year before we did have all the guest posters. We'll send an invite out to other illustrators that we know, and ask them to speak on a topic, and they can share whatever wisdom they've gleaned over the years, or lessons they've learned, and we'll post it. And we have a calendar. I have a calendar that I create of the topics, and we kind of know where the chat's going to go a few months in advance, and so we can kind of time it and get things in order for that. And we try to make it parallel to the experience of the challenge. So if we're talking about let's say character development, character studies, and you're drawing your characters over and over, we might invite an expert like Kelly Light or Molly Idle, who they just did a character design workshop talk out in California for their SCWI chapter, and we know that they have those kind of workshops, so they know how to kind of break the information down into bite-sized pieces, take away something valuable from that. Or we might have something towards the end when it comes to talking about final art. And so maybe we'll invite somebody who works in multimedia or traditional or digital media, and they can talk to the fact about, it's not what you make or how you make it, it's, what speaks to you and how that's part of your voice as an illustrator. And that, people can kind of relax instead of sitting there thinking that they have to paint or draw a certain way. They can do what best serves the story and what best serves their voice. So, we just try to do well by everybody that way.
Well, now, so we're going to talk about the dummy write dummy challenge in a second, but let's give an overview about the picture book dummy challenge, how participants participate, and when you said it's a lot of work for you guys, I'm sure it is. Can you tell us something about that? What kind of work? What are you all doing behind the scenes? We'll focus on picture book dummy challenge first, which starts in January of 2016. Yeah. And let's talk about that one first, and then we'll go into the Write Dummy Challenge. Picture Book Dummy Challenge. What is it? What is this creature that lasts 8 months and puts people under the gun?
It's more like 6 months. It's not a full year. We try to end it around July, but yeah.
Okay, 6 months. How does it work? What's expected of us as participants?
Well, I think when you're done with the challenge, you should have a complete working dummy that you're ready to send out to agents, editors, art directors, in hopes of getting, either an agent or published.
Russ, so, what is a picture book dummy?
It's usually it's a picture book that's been sketched out, usually fairly detailed, and you have your type in place. And then what we usually do is have 2 to 3 color spreads to go with the dummy. Okay. So you're actually holding like a sketch version of a book.
Yeah, it's a mock-up.
It's a mock-up. What's it for? What do you do with one of these when you're done?
A lot of times you submit it to agents, publishers, art directors, and also it kind of helps you when you start putting the dummy together. You can see holes in your story.
Right.
Like the story, you can say, oh, I really need to work on that, or the pacing's wrong. So it actually it's like an educational piece, because each time you do one, you learn more and more.
Yes, kind of a diagnostic tool, if nothing else. Well, so why is a dummy important for a picture book of all things? What is special about picture books that requires this mock-up, this prototype called a dummy?
Well, unlike like a novel, which you can read on an e-reader, it's a novel isn't contingent upon its format. A picture book is a creature that's it is what it is, and the experience changes when you take it out of the format. So the book itself is important, and the design of the book, the page turns are extremely important to the storytelling and the experience of the story, and becoming familiar with the process strengthens you as an illustrator, because you take the lessons, like Russ was saying, you take the lessons you learn from each one and you can apply it to the next one you create. you work on your pacing, your speed, and it's a creature that you can talk about it all you want, but until you actually go through the process of creating one, you don't really grasp exactly what it is. You know, you have to really go through the process of doing it. And even writers, you know, I tell writers that they should be dummying up their picture books, you know, even if they're not drawing, just create a 32-page dummy, place their text, figure out where the page turns are, and they can use it, like you said, as a diagnostic tool for pacing and figuring out the flow of their story. For illustrators, it's doubly so because you have so many choices as an illustrator. You know, you're interpreting a story through your art, and so you have to decide what direction you're going through the dummy, and that's where you hash that out. You know, you hash it out in your thumbnails. You decide what perspective you're going to be drawing from. You decide the composition, your color choices, and how that carries the story forward. And importantly, you've got to make sure you leave places for the text to lay on your page. I think that's one of the biggest lessons a lot of illustrators learn through making a dummy is, oh yeah, there's words on this page. You know, realize they left no room for the words.
It's a design element right along with everything else. Okay.
And it kind of forces you to take a step back instead of sinking into the art so much. You take a step back and consider the whole. You know, and as well as each of the parts. So that's why it's so important.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you almost become an art director, graphic designer as you work on these books. Because, like Diandra said, you know, you have to work with the type, and you know, you have to working in 32 pages and multiples of 4 pages. That's a lot of times a lot of things people don't understand. You know, it's like, oh, I have a 33-page dummy. No, you don't. You have to go 32 or 36.
Right. So the Picture Book Dummy Challenge is a framework, a support structure for somebody putting their dummy together, and because you have calendarized your presentations on the blog by working illustrators and others in the industry, a person could actually step through the dummy making process during those 6 months.
Right.
Take the education from you guys, come to the Thursday night Twitter chats for feedback or Q&A or whatever they're needing at that moment, at that stage, and is this wonderful structure for someone to finish this very difficult, challenging process.
I think a lot of creative types need a deadline to work towards.
Yeah.
If you don't have deadlines, you just kind of float around a little bit, and so you know that's one of the reasons we do these challenges is because people then have a deadline and they feel motivated, and you know maybe this will finally be the time that they cross the finish line, you know, and it's we try to stress, you know, yes, do your best, but it's not about the final product. It's about the process and understanding each thing. And finished is always better than perfect.
Good mantra there.
Yeah, this is a great project to fail at, and what I mean is, even if you fail, there's value in putting in the effort and learning kind of what's in your way. You know, if you try it and you fail, at least you'll see what's in your way. You'll experience effort, hopefully daily effort, and you'll get a little bit of peer critique. And there's value in all of those things. So I would recommend just jumping in, going for it.
Just jumping in with your pencil. What do you mean by peer critique, Russ? I'm sorry, Rubin. Yeah.
For the Right Dummy Challenge, which the deadline is next week, I think.
Yeah.
It's coming up here soon. We're going to be pairing participants together so that they can kind of help each other out, give each other feedback, and root each other on, be cheerleaders. Positive critique. I'm not saying a lot of people are afraid of that word, and you got to get over it. You got to be willing to have your stuff critiqued, and this will give you an opportunity to do that leading up to the Picture Dummy Challenge, and you'll be so much more ready come January 1st if you participate in this 3-month primer.
The critiques that are on the manuscripts, is that right? The text manuscripts, not on the dummy yet, because that starts in January.
Right.
Correct.
So we're putting on our writer's hats now. Why is it important for an illustrator to think about putting on a writer's hat?
Illustration and writing are basically the same thing. It's just a different medium. Where illustrators tell stories with pictures, writers tell stories with words. So it's just kind of switching it. And I think most illustrators are natural-born writers. We just are used to drawing instead of using the words. So I think it's just another skill set that we just need to practice because it's all innate within us anyway.
Very,
Actually, that's
very
what
good.
the market's looking for. They're looking if you can do both. I mean, you've got a leg up. It's,
Yeah.
you know,
It's a leg up.
yeah, a lot
Double
of publishers and agents are really looking for the combination of the two.
Why do you think that is, Russ?
That's a good question.
Somebody asked that in one of the publisher chats that they have online on Twitter every once in a while, and from what I remember the editor saying, she was saying that besides the cost of benefits, because there's only one person that you're paying, but as an author illustrator you get more money. There's also the benefit of having a unified vision, and sometimes not that author illustrators books are better than books where it's a team of an author and illustrator, but sometimes that story is benefited from having a single person telling it, and it's solidified in a way that's unique. And then also I think they mentioned that streamlined process of only having to communicate with one person during the whole time instead of the writer and the illustrator and around and around. So
that's a convenience factor for them, and for us, it's intellectual property that has value beyond the gig or the illustration assignment. Let me ask you, why is Twitter a good place for illustrators to hang out? Why do illustrators need social media? What's important about Twitter in particular, too?
Because they're all hermits.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you can still stay in your cave but talk to people.
And you can't say too much on Twitter, so
you got those 140.
Probably a good thing.
Probably a good thing. It teaches you to pare down your writing, right?
Yeah, I always compare Twitter to a cocktail party. I say to people who are really overwhelmed by it, I say Twitter is just one big cocktail party. It's just a matter of wandering around the room and finding the conversations that you want to be a part of. And if you follow the people, the right people, if you follow other illustrators, you follow, authors, editors, or agents, or whoever it is you want to follow, you'll see those conversations, and eventually you'll have social circles online. I have a great many friends that I've met on Twitter that I've never met in person. Yes. But a bunch of them are coming to town in April for TLA, and we'll meet for the first time, and we already know we're going to have a good time. We already know we like each other, that we connect on that level, And Twitter is a tool for us. It's one of the easiest tools promotion-wise for us because we can share our work, because Twitter now has the expanded view of, when you put a JPEG up on there. We can, you get people to retweet you, and suddenly, the work you've done has traveled further than you had initially thought. And it's a great place to show your voice as a creator, to show what you're about. To connect to other like-minded people, and like you said, resources. There's so many resources, and people are really generous online, and it's a great place to see links and articles and open calls for submissions on stuff that, if you're just toiling away by yourself all day and never going online, you might miss.
And it seems that a lot of art directors and editors and agents love hanging out on Twitter as well, and you can meet them there in a very informal cocktail party kind of environment, which makes it easier.
They lurk in our chat all the time. We have art directors and agents and sometimes editors who will lurk in our chats, and just every once in a while they'll pop in with something, really solid, some solid advice, and they'll just pop in, and sometimes they engage the whole time. Every once in a while we'll feature one as a guest chatter. But they're aware. The ones that are media savvy, social media savvy, they're aware of the chats. They're aware of the different chats that happen throughout the week and what people are doing online. So it's to your benefit to be there.
And you steer them to other chats going on that you know of that editors and agents or like Giuseppe Castellano might be having, or there's there's just a lot of this cross communication, which is amazing. And now we're able to put our work up on Twitter, so everybody can see each other's work, and you get a sense of who you're talking to sometimes when it comes to other illustrators. That's really neat. And the fact is, your group was the first. I mean, the tweets have been going on for years now.
Yeah.
Like clockwork. It's just incredible, and this social media has been just great for illustrators. Facebook too, for that matter. We've all gotten to know each other in ways we would never have in a pre-web universe. That's me waxing, pontificating, I guess. But are you guys up for taking some Q&A? Chris is saying, I wasn't involved in the last picture book dummy challenge, but I remember reading that some of the completed dummies were shown to prospective agents at the end of the challenge. Just curious if any were on their way to being published, and does that still work?
I'm trying to think.
I think we had the prize was we had an editor pick 3 pitches, and then they were submitted. Is that correct? Is that what we did last time?
I think so. It was the people who completed a challenge signed up for the grand prize, and then they did so by sharing a pitch, which is something we'll cover at the end of the Write Dummy Challenge as well. They shared a pitch for their story, and then our secret judge picked the 3 they felt were the most promising for publication. And I think then those 3 sent in their dummies and received feedback on them. I don't know if they then took the step further about submitting. I can only recall one of the winners was Greg. Do you know, Russ, if anything happened with that?
I don't think so, but I mean, yeah, that's a good question.
But I know conversations have started. When we did when Bonnie and Wendy did the challenge for the first time, one of my pitches was actually picked by an agent, and she gave me feedback on the story. And I'm still in contact with that person, and she has openly said, "You ever have anything, send it to me." So I mean, connections are made. It's just a matter of timing. And timing is such an issue in this industry. When an agent or editor is closed or open, if they're open to new clients and etc. But it's still an opportunity that's kind of too good to pass up, And we stress that the grand prize is not the end goal for this. It's kind of a reward. It's because, like we said, the process of creating the dummy is an education that everybody needs, especially if this is what you want to do professionally. But yeah, it's a nice little perk.
Yeah, it's kind of honest in that way. I mean, you guys aren't offering door prizes and promises of conferences with agents. You can do all of that on your own in social media or going to SCWI conferences. But this is the laboratory where you get to, in a nurturing environment, sort of bring your project to life under your hands, and it's all about the work, right? We've heard that a million times. Kathy is asking, I have a project where the illustrations often give info that's not available in the text. How do I deal with that in the first 3 months of the Write Dummy Challenge?
So the illustrations are showing information that's not in the text. That's kind of what we do. I mean, illustrations add another layer to the story. So if there's a secondary story, we've all seen those books that have a little story that's happening in the background, and kids are the best at finding those. We see the main story, but there's always, I think it's a special thing that illustrators get to do. They add that little background story that runs throughout the whole book, and comes to its own conclusion, and it's totally okay. It shouldn't distract from the main part of the main plot of the book, but it's completely normal to have information in the pictures that aren't said in the text. That's kind of what you want. You don't want text that says, Sally was wearing a yellow dress with green shoes and, whatever. That stuff should be said in the pictures. It shouldn't be said in the words. It'll bog it down too much.
Avis is asking, in the writing challenge schedule, there's a list of topics with weekly deadlines. If the challenge, or this is the Write Dummy Challenge. If the challenge starts on October 1st, which it does, October 1st is when this all kicks off for the writing part, what can we do to catch up? Those of us who don't have 3 ideas, a story and character, a plot chart. Okay, these were things you've been talking about as a prelude to the challenge. What suggestions do you have? How can someone jump in?
October 1st is just the deadline for signing up for the critique groups. So, they still have, a week and a half to sign up for that. And in that time, they can do what everyone has already done. These steps, they're not really time-consuming. You know, each step isn't expected to take a week long. We just pace that out so people could kind of ease in to the challenge and ease into the idea of writing their story. If they have a story they know they want to write, that they just get to work. You know, if they don't have a story they want to write, then this is the time they need to start brainstorming. They need to think about those ideas that they have written down that have been niggling in the back of their mind that they want to develop. You know, if they have a character who insists that you know, it's their turn, you know, now is the time to get to know that character, figure out what their conflict and problem is in the story, and just, you know, write that stuff out, outline it if they need to. You know, we'll start actually swapping drafts. I think the first draft swap is October 15th. So they have from now until, you know, October 8th, we have finished draft 1. They have now until then to kind of get their, you know, ducks in a row.
Okay, great. Chris is asking, can you give more details about the plot chart, which is step 3? Can you talk about that now?
The plot chart is something I used to teach to my 7th graders. I used to be an English teacher, and it's the basic for any fiction storytelling. If you Google plot chart, there will be a dozen different diagrams, but basically it's the basic format of a story. You have your exposition, which is your beginning and your introduction of a character, and then you have your conflict, and that's the problem. You know, what does that character want, and what's stopping them from getting it? And that's when the conflict happens, and that's when the action starts rising. And that the rising action is when they're attempting to overcome this problem. You know, and so that can go up and down in however many different ways you want to do that. If you ever see a plot chart for a novel, you know, that goes it looks like a mountain range. You know, picture book's a little bit more simpler. It's usually just one peak. You know, and then when the character, however many times they try it, usually it's a 3-act story. When they solve that problem, that's the resolution, and so then the action starts falling because, you know, the story is coming to an end. But all of that kind of stuff it's available online. All they have to do is Google it and pick which one, you know, speaks clearly to them. And it's just basically an easy way to kind of outline your story. Make sure you know the character, you know what the problem is, you know the attempts at solving it, how it's going to end. I think a lot of us, when we come up with a story, we know the ending, you know, but maybe we don't know the middle. It's called the saggy middle for a reason. It's the hardest part to write. You know, and that's you got to make sure it contains the oomph all the way through. So, you know, you can do plot charts over dozens and dozens of times until you figure out if your story is going to flow the way it needs to flow.
Fantastic. Yeah, neat. From a 7th grade writing teacher, no less. That's really, really cool. When I first knew Dee, she was teaching, and yeah, it's amazing how much kids are given information about how to write stories and how to write exposition. I mean, they learn that. It's real sophisticated stuff really early, it seems like.
Well, and they learn it on the laps of their parents. The kids looking at your picture books, they're going to know. And they will totally check out if that action doesn't kick in soon enough, they're like, I'm out. You know, on to the next book. So
that's a really good point. And the picture book is our first introduction to Aristotle's dramatic theory and the whole storytelling, the whole human experience distilled down into 28 pages of pictures and text. It's their introduction to art and literature at the same time, and we're creating it for them. That's very inspiring. All right, so Paul's got a question for us. Asking, all right, this is I'm assuming he's talking about the Write Dummy Challenge. What do you suggest about textless picture books?
Ooh,
that's a good one, isn't it?
That is a good one. I mean,
I couldn't find any places matching art literature.
Hold on, my iPhone just started talking to me.
Oh.
All right, Siri, this is not the time or the place. I still think you have to write the story. You know, whether you are going to use words or not, you still have to plot it out, like Diandra said. You know, you have to create your arc, and you're still going to do basic writing. At least that's how I would approach it.
Write something for the critique group.
Well,
and understanding that that's not going to appear in the book, but this is my book.
The easiest way to probably do a wordless picture book, you know, if you're an illustrator especially, is just to write art notes for yourself. So if you're getting someone else to critique, they know what's inside your head because they can't look in your head and see the pictures that you have drafted for it. We're not there yet. And you know, he can still do the plot chart. And we discussed this in our chat last week. Part of writing as an illustrator is you're going to start drawing early on, you know, and there's nothing wrong with it if you already know what your character looks like because you've created a sketch. If you've got sketches of the world that this story is happening in, that's totally normal. If as you're writing certain plot points in the story, you have a thumbnail because, oh, I know exactly what this is going to look like, that's totally normal. The best way to check pacing and such for a wordless picture book is to do a thumbnail storyboard. You know, just 32, and we'll probably put a diagram up of this, 32 pages of the flow and the setup of a picture book, and just you draw on those little squares what each thing is going to be, and so that you can see pulled back how that story flows, because you're not relying on words at all, so the picture has to do 100% of the work. And you know, study masters like David Wiesner, you know, and look at his books, Tuesday, Flotsam, Mr. Waffles. I've seen him speak about his process, and that's what he does. He draws and draws and draws and draws and draws over and over and over again until that story just flows seamlessly between images. And it's not impossible to do. It just, you know, it's a different aspect.
Yeah, Unspoken by Henry Cole is another fantastic example of a wordless. Well, you guys know wordless picture books. I'm sure everyone watching has their favorites. Heather's asking, Dee, do you have a format to present a graphic picture book style that would work for the critique group? Okay, so you're talking about for the Write Dummy Challenge, Heather, I presume. Okay.
So what was the question again? A format
she's asking,
for...
yeah, to present a I think she means like a graphic novel picture book style.
Oh, she's asking the right person. If you're doing a graphic novel style format, you know, our challenge is mostly focused on picture books, but there are several picture books, especially now, that include comic panels and word bubbles and those kind of comic elements, and that's totally fine. Because of the formatting, you're going to probably want to, as part of your manuscript, include comic script techniques, which if you just Google, you know, comic script writing, you'll find examples. Don't look at Alan Moore's because those are crazy, but you'll find dozens of examples of what a comic script looks like. And basically, it's written like a stage play. You have your introduction to characters, you have, you know, the page number, and then you break the page down to the elements that are in it. So if you have a picture book and the page, you know, it's one page and there's maybe, you know, 2 small panels inset, then you need to write panel 1 and then explain what's in that panel. If there's talking in that panel, then you need to have dialogue tags and what the dialogue is going to be. So you're going to have to break that down so that the person who's reading that manuscript can imagine that, oh, it's not just one giant image, this is multiple images happening on each page, and this is multiple elements happening on each page.
Is that book Robot coming out? That's almost like a wordless picture book, graphic novel. Isn't it a loss for the author illustrator? But
there are a lot. Hold on a second.
There are a lot. You got some show and tell. I've got a room full of those things. But everybody's running to get their favorite wordless picture book or graphic novel.
Okay, this isn't completely wordless, but this is Toon Books. This is Jeff Smith. He was the creator of Bone. So if you know graphic novels, you know who he is.
Toon Books are like comic books for beginning readers and toddlers.
They started out with the really young ones, and now they've moved up. You know, this is kind of like an early reader format with mini.
Right.
And now they've moved up kind of into early chapter books. They're doing books about mythology and more complex stories. So in this book, you know, Little Mouse is supposed to be getting ready for school. And so we have, you know, it's an open spread, just a regular spread, just like you see in a regular picture book. And he says, Little Mouse, and he says, yes, Mama. Okay, so that looks just like a regular picture book except with word bubbles. But then when we get into this, you can see that those pages are broken down into panels. And so what you would need to do in your manuscript is say, you know, page 12, panel 1. I can't wait to see the chickens in the barn. You know, Little Mouse tries to put on his sock. Panel 2, they drop lots of yummy seeds on the ground. Little Mouse is still struggling to get his sock on. You know, you're going to have to do your art notes and your dialogue, and you're going to have to spell it out for your readers. But there's a lot of resources out there. You just
this is what gets boys reading and
Right.
reluctant readers. The graphic novel format is very big right now.
It's accessible for everybody, and even kids who can't read. You know, that's why picture books are such a great thing in comics, because kids who can't read the words, they still read the pictures. But we stressed in our chat, I guess it was last week, writing as an illustrator, to read. I could pull these books out because I knew them, you know. Yeah. If you're not reading right now, that's another thing for those of you who are still getting ready and want to jump into the Write Dummy Challenge. You need to be going to your library, and we stress the library because it's free, and check out as many books as possible.
Unless it's one of our books, then you should buy it.
Right.
Yeah, buy these.
Had a book come out yesterday.
Buy our books. Buy each other's books. We spend every weekend going to someone or another's book signing.
Yeah, I'm going on Saturday. You should be reading the books, the kind of books that you want to be writing and illustrating. We call those mentor texts. You know, they kind of teach you the lessons of how things work, and then once you figure out the rules, you can figure out how to work outside the rules and kind of, you know, bend the box a little bit. But yeah.
Ben Heckey is the author I was thinking of. Thank you, Chris.
The Little Robot, yeah.
The Little Robot, and Paul was saying he loves Bluebird by Bob Stark, and Baby Mouse is a real big hit in Julie's first grade classroom. It's I mean, the kids are crazy about that series. And Dane is asking, I've signed up for the group, but haven't received any acknowledgement so far. I didn't even receive a message about this podcast. Does this mean I'm not officially signed up? Dane, well, the reason why you didn't hear anything about this podcast is because that was on my shoulders. It wasn't them. This is my thing, and I'm just not as speedy in my social media as I need to be. But what does happen when you go to the site and sign up for the Write Dummy Challenge?
I'll take this one. So anyone can do it. The only thing you need to sign up for is the critiques. Anyone can follow along with the schedule we posted or do whatever you want. If you want to sign up for a critique group, if you'll just email me by next Thursday, October 1st, saying you want to participate in the challenge, and I'll mark you down. You also need to go to the blog post that talks about the Write Dummy Challenge and download the honor agreement. And sign it and date it, and also send that to me by next Thursday. So there's no, legal weird things, and we can all be on the same page before I make all the critique groups.
Thank you, Blythe. And I'm going to put the link up to the blog right there, and you should see that. That's where you go. There's something for you to sign. These are all volunteers. Our team here, volunteers, and they're not, they're not going to be holding our hands, like den mothers or like a school. This is sort of the honor system. This is you guys and challenge with yourself, huh?
Yeah, it's an independent study project. We're given the calendar, we're given the structure. We'll have the chats every once in a while, but we're trusting our participants to be self-motivated because if you're going to be part of this industry, you're going to have to do the work on your own. Your editor and agent and art director aren't going to be sitting there going, hey, have you drawn pages 10 through 15 today? You're going to have to monitor yourself and make sure you get the work done. And so we're just kind of echoing that. And because of how much work is involved with the Dummy Challenge starting in January, we're just keeping this one light and easy.
Yeah, light and easy. Do you get hundreds signing up for the Picture Book Dummy Challenge every year? What kind of numbers are we?
I know we had over 100 last time.
Over 100. That's an incredible amount of work and people. So Dummy Write Challenge, as Blythe said, it starts Thursday, October 1st. Write in. Blythe will match you with a critique group, and they're going to be rotating critique groups, right? You'll have the benefit during the 3 months of 3 different critique groups participating with them. Can you tell a little bit more about how this will work, and just a little bit more about the structure of the Write Dummy Challenge?
I think our main goal is just to I know a lot of people within our KidLit chats have kind of been talking about they wanted to write, so we're trying to give them an opportunity to kind of take baby steps into it, and guide, that's why we're doing the longer increments, to just kind of guide them into, if they're just starting out writing. So a lot of people, if they have more experience, they can jump right in. And I think with the critique groups as an option, it's kind of getting that and rotating them, the part of rotating, so you get a bunch of different point of views, and maybe you'll click with some of them, and then, end up being a critique group with them outside the challenge and start having that relationship. So when you do start writing more and start feeling more comfortable with everything, you'll have people that you've connected with to get feedback on whenever you have new stuff that you've written.
Excellent.
Mark, I think another benefit to rotating is if you go through 2 or 3 critique partners and you start to see common denominators, then you know where strength is or where weakness is, and it helps you identify
that's a great point.
Democratically where your weaknesses and strengths are.
A consensus, that's a really good value there.
And it's also being able to learn how to take a critique. A lot of people may be doing this for the first time, and so it's a learning curve for everybody on how to give a constructive critique as well as receive one. And like Rubin was saying, if you hear something, multiple times, that's kind of a red flag. But at the same time, it's a way to figure out how to take things with a grain of salt. Just because somebody disagrees with something a character did or turn of a story doesn't mean you should necessarily change it right away, but it's something to consider.
Yeah.
You can't listen to everybody's suggestions and still stay true to your story. Otherwise, you're going to split into a dozen different ways, and then your story's going to die. It's a way for you to kind of maybe winnow things down, streamline your story, tighten it up, or somebody might give you a suggestion about an action from a character or a plot point that totally opens up your story in a way you hadn't considered before and makes it even better. So it's just a way to get people, bouncing off each other and hopefully coming out stronger and better stories at the end of it.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes 2 or 3 iterations of a critique group before you find the right critique group, the right chemistry, or the right insights for your project. And so this kind of mimics a real world situation where you have to kind of shop around and try out some different critique groups. It's really a fun progressive idea on your guys' part. In our Austin chapter, we have a lot of published children's book writers. Our Austin chapter of SCBWI, just about every one of them that I know is in a critique group. Mm-hmm. And it's already been mentioned here, you guys have all underscored how important a critique group is. And illustrators, we're trying to leverage you guys over into the writing world if you haven't done it already, because we think it's a good way, in my community, we feel like it's a good way to build up some intellectual property. So we want to encourage all of you illustrators out there who are just hired hand type illustrators to think about creating, because as Blythe mentioned, mostly illustrators are writers, they're just doing it with pictures. They're writers and they may not even know it yet. Yeah, there was one more question here. It was from Heather. A good question. Are you matching genres? For example, nonfiction.
No, because no one's sending me their picture ideas or anything. I think it's also good to have people from different genres, to get different feedback. You don't want everyone who's doing the same thing, because then you want differing opinions. But yeah, no one's doing a picture or anything, so I'm just doing it by person right now.
Just doing it by person to person. Chris is asking, do you have to participate in the Write Challenge to go into the Picture Book Dummy Challenge in January?
No.
No.
The Dummy Challenge was basically started because I think when we started doing the Dummy Challenge, there was only a few weeks of really writing, and I think a lot of people were stumbling at that point. So we figured if we give people 3 to 4 months to really write their story, get it developed and get it down and worked out, that when it's time to do the dummy, they could just step right in and then go right to the pictures and character development and end pieces. So if you already have a story and it's all ready to go, you can wait till January and step right in. So no, it's not a requirement.
Very good. I'm going to put everybody's URL up here. And including the KidLitArt blogspot URL, so you can go to these sites to learn more about the moderators and about the challenge. Next week starts the Blythe will be making the connections for the critique groups. In closing, we're gonna kind of wrap up here. In closing, though, do any of you guys have a little quick war story to tell about your experience crafting your first picture book dummy, and something that you remember vividly about it, to maybe give hope?
My book that just came out in May was 5 years in the works. I did this little drawing, and Debbie Ohe said, you should write a story for that. I'm like, I don't write stories, I just draw pictures. She goes, no, you should write a story. I said, I really, no, never thought about it. She goes, well, if you don't, I'm going to. So I kind of lit a fire under me, so I sat down and I wrote this story, and I read it to my wife, and she's like, that is horrible. There was no structure, I had no idea what I was doing, so I sat down and wrote a second draft, and I think it was even worse. And then I realized, I really need to go to the library, start reading picture books, because our kids are grown. It's been a while since I even looked through a picture book. So went to the library, spent hours just reading and reading and reading, and then I'm like, oh, I get it now. Yeah, that was pretty bad. So I went through probably like 15 drafts before I got to the point where it was ready for an agent. And then even then, it went through a couple more drafts, and the publisher went through a couple more drafts. So yeah, my first attempt was really, really bad.
That's a good one. I'm going to tell one on myself. I sent a picture book, I crafted a picture book, sent it off. This was a long time ago. And Harper and Row, it was then called Harper and Row, the editor wrote me back and said, this is really good, and we're really interested in it. It's got considerable charm and blah, blah, blah. And then she said, have you read a lot of picture books? She asked me that point blank, and then I had to look at myself and say, oh my God, I really haven't. I'm sort of dumb about this. And then the project gradually unraveled. So I had an editor ask me point blank, are you conversant with picture books? Do you know? Or did you just think you have an idea of what a picture book is, and without schooling yourself? So I'll never forget that little lesson. It kind of underscores what Dee was saying a while ago. Anybody else?
I got a story.
Okay.
I do, Mark. I got one that kind of supports the Write Dummy Challenge. When I made my book, let me get a picture. Oh!
Samurai Santa. Very good plug. All right.
Wait, let me get Russ's in there.
Faraway Friends. Good for you. Okay, we'll put these titles up on the page.
Thanks,
so
Rubin.
when I wrote my book, my editor made me abandon my visuals for like a month. And we just focused on the words. And that's something I didn't do up front because I kind of wrote in thumbnails. And we found a lot of weaknesses kind of in the logic of what I was setting up in the first act. I did have a pretty good structure, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. You had your exposition, your conflict, your resolution, a pretty good arc, but there was something just kind of off, and we could all feel it. And by getting rid of the visuals and just looking at the words, it helped me identify where that logic was missing, because I was relying too much on the visuals to fill in the rest of the story. And there was just a little click with justifying why these ninjas didn't want to play with Yukio in my book in the first act. And we solved that by getting rid of the visuals and just focusing on the words. And it also helped me kind of see the lyricism of the words and the way they could just kind of flowed without the pictures. It helped, it lent toward that too. So there are benefits, and it might be something, as was in my case, that your editor makes you do eventually anyway, so you might as well do it now and get it done.
Fantastic. Fantastic. What is often said is that the first thing they'll pick up in your submission package is the text, the manuscript. They'll read that. If that's not working for them, they're not even going to open your dummy and look at your pictures, because it really does start with the language. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, and I think you really need to read your stories out loud, even in front of the mirror. Just read out loud so you can hear if it has a beat to it. There's a rhythm. You can find the clunky spots and start tripping over words. So I think that's really important to do at first. So when I read it to my wife, she was like, "Oof,
oof, oof." You don't want to hear that. Oof. That's what the Write Dummy Challenge is for, to get rid of all those oofs, get them out of the way, and correct them, huh? Anybody else want to tell a fun picture book dummy challenge, personal challenge story?
Well, the first dummy I ever made is sitting in a drawer, and it's never going to see the light of day. So it's just part of the process. You got to get those stinkers out so that it clears the way for the really good ones. The latest dummy I've made, I had critiqued at our local conference in the spring, and the agent read it and she loved it. But like Rubin said, you know, I was letting the illustrations do a lot of the heavy lifting. And she said, you know, I love the voice, I love the story. There's a rhythm here. She's like, but it's really scarce. Like it's a little too light on the text. She said, you know, you can flesh this out more. And that's a lesson that I've learned, you know, over and over, is that I'm, you know, because I'm an illustrator first, I was relying on the pictures too much. And so now it's you know, kind of going over to the writer's side and being like, okay, let me exercise and flex this muscle a little bit more, so that the marriage of text and illustration is more balanced and there's a better rhythm between the two on the page. And so, you know, that's what I'm working on now, is really fleshing that text out and letting the words have a chance to shine as well. And, you know, there's no shame in seeing your weaknesses, because it helps you realize what they are, and then you can work on fixing them and becoming stronger as a storyteller. So
excellent. KidLitArt is trying to help us all become better writers. You guys are just expanding in your mission.
That's right.
Well, I tell a funny story about some picture book endeavor of yours.
I just finished my first dummy before the LA conference, and you know kind of how it works in writing, but the actual application is, I think you just need to dive in. I had been putting it off for so long, and then finally I was just like, you got to get it out of the way. And I think once you get all these things out of the way, and I've been looking at agents and all this stuff, I think that's the scariest part, is just like the first time you're doing it and learning how to do it. And once you get it out of the way, it's like old hat right afterwards. So
right. Just like learning anything new, you know,
yeah.
Software, anything. It's just, well, that is fantastic, guys. If you're watching and if you enjoyed this, type in your thank yous to the gang. Go visit their blogs. Go sign up for the Write Dummy Challenge. It's free. Get your information.
Don't wait till Thursday.
Don't wait till Thursday, because don't dump it all around all at once. There's one person here, and then wonderful team, and then tune in Thursday nights for their Twitter chats. There used to be a wonderful archive of your past chats. You still have the archive. Oh.
Yeah, if you go to our blog, there's a little illustration of an elephant, because we don't have a widget yet. Maybe Ruby can do that. He's so good at that. We sort by all of our chats, and if you click on that elephant, it'll take you to the archives, and you can see the past chats that we've had. And I don't know how long it archives them for, but there's quite a few on there.
Quite a few. You can read a whole summer long reading those things, and you can also go back through the blog and write the posts from previous picture book dummy challenges that are just full of this. I mean, it's a wonderful, it's a college education right there on their blog that they've created, just in a spirit of sharing and education. So it's fantastic, a fantastic resource, and tell your friends about the resource. Thank you so much, Blythe. I'm going to put you up, and thanks for joining us today. And I apologize for the technical glitches at the beginning. Y'all hung in there very, very calmly and patiently, which is wonderful. True illustrators. Nothing phases you. Thank you, Dee. Thank you for except the words. Hence the Write Dummy Challenge. There's Dee. And Rubin, thank you for joining us. It's really great to visit with you guys online. And Russ, we'll put the titles of your books up and the Amazon page link, if I can find them. It'll be on the page before the end of today, on the event page. And stay in touch. And on behalf of KidLitArt and Marks and Splashes Learning, thank you for joining us and tuning in today.
Thank you. See you on Twitter.
Bye-bye.
See you on the shelves, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you on the shelves. Okay. Bye-bye now.
Bye.